Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of The Mandala Effect. I am really excited to bring you another incredible guest, and today I would like to welcome Pandora Paloma, who is a life and business coach, speaker, author, and host of the Magnetic Woman podcast. I'm really excited to have Pandora on because I've been following her work and her journey ever since I was healing from my illness a few years ago, and I read her book, Intuitive Living. It really resonated with me, and how it's not about the things that we do, but it's how we do them. And I hope to dig into that a bit today. Pandora, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so in your words, just to kick us off, can you tell us who Pandora is and what is her mission on this planet?
Yes, absolutely. So I call myself a business and visibility coach and consultant. My mission ultimately is to get more, is to help women get visible, to build businesses that feel like home, and build what I call kind of multi-dimensional wealth. So that's, wealth financially, but in freedom, in choice, in time, in purpose. So there's a real vibrancy that comes with building multidimensional wealth. And all of this supports gender equity. I want to see more women reaching the top, in quotation marks, but just
the elusive
really
top.
being seen in, I think it's still like 12% of the world's millionaires are women, and so I'm looking to increase that number substantially. And that's ultimately what I'm about.
That's awesome. So what drove you to that mission? What took you there?
So I ended up working in marketing and communications when I was still in university. Actually, I moved to London when I was 16. I did an internship at a PR agency and just sort of very quickly realized that I was good at it. I've always been a storyteller. I recently found like a stash of old things from when I was young, and I'd made storybooks, and I love stories. I've always loved words, and I love reading, love English literature, and so I kind of did that, and then hit my Saturn return at age 27, and was top of my game, PR director, team of 9, bought my first flat, good salary, and didn't really feel that great about life. I was like, this is not fulfilling. And so I sort of took a bit of a U-turn, and another passion of mine was always sort of health and wellness, and I retrained in nutrition, and wrote my book, Intuitive Eating and Living. And at that point, I started to get a lot of people come to me to say, do you do business coaching? Because how are you doing so well? And I was like, well, I suppose I'm just a natural marketeer. Like I've got, the knowledge and a gift in being able to, create really, strong, powerful, converting content. And I understood marketing on a bigger level, like how we communicate what we're selling. And so I started business coaching, and that's sort of grown and grown and grown since then. So that was 2019. Yeah, because my daughter was a year old. And I've kind of grown and evolved and solidified sort of my business model ever since. Yeah.
Awesome. What made you want to write Intuitive Living and Eating and Living?
At the time, a lot of people were talking about intuitive eating. Mm-hmm. There were a couple of books that had come out on that topic. And in my work, it wasn't just about the food. Well, in fact, it wasn't about the food. It was very much how we were living, who we were. Are you living your values? Are you in a supported, divine, relationship? Do you enjoy, your job, your environment? All of these things are the things that prompt us to use food as a coping mechanism. Ultimately, it's a way that we numb out or that we avoid. And so where a lot of people were talking about the eating part, I was more interested in reshaping how we were living and how we were feeling, in order to get to the same result. And at the time, you know, that was happening in my world. My clients were seeing incredible results. And I kind of knew when the book was published that was that part of my chapter. Like I always say to my clients, like, get known for one thing, do that one thing really, really well, and then it's much, much easier for you to pivot. So my pivot into business coaching, as I say, like, was a very natural extension, purely because, you know, people were coming to me. And I've kind of grown and evolved since there. So yeah, and the deeper kind of meaning and purpose behind that book was that I myself had, you know, issues with food when I was young. And I knew that book would, you know, support women specifically to not have the same problem.
Yeah, it's interesting because we often write the book that we needed to read when we were younger.
Yeah, totally. If I knew that, you know, when I was young, it would have been very different. And it took me a long time to, you know, heal that relationship with with myself and with food. And yeah, so it's special.
Yeah, definitely. And as I was reading it, because I'd been diagnosed with cancer, but a couple of weeks before I'd been diagnosed with chronic stress. And so you think about all of the factors that lead somebody to be burned out in a way, such as cancer or nervous breakdown or whatever it looks like on the external. It's the internal factors leading up to it that causes the external manifestation of an illness, a disease. And, you know, 95% of illnesses are stress related. So I think messages like that are so important, and it hit me at the right time. I mean, the book was quite old when I picked it up. I don't even know how I found it, but it was one of those things, divine timing. And like you say, we write the book that we need to read.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, so much of it, I'm sure if I read it again now, I'd be like, oh, I don't think that anymore. You know, it's like my consciousness has grown and evolved since. So, but who knows? There's another book in me somewhere. I'm just not quite sure what it is yet.
Of course there is, and it's got to be about business, surely.
Yeah, I think it's something around bridging the spirituality and strategy piece. You know.
Yes, amazing. Okay, so let's talk. It's funny because you mentioned pivoting, and that was one of my questions for you. Was you have obviously pivoted in your niches. Can and the lessons that you learned through that, you said it was a very natural extension. And sometimes we are guided that way. We're guided towards something. But what advice could you give somebody who is maybe facing a lot of resistance in their business at the moment, who is maybe questioning the pivot and not sure which way to go? Yes,
I would say, you know, the industry has changed a lot over the years. I'd say certainly in the last two. Obviously, after the pandemic, during the pandemic in 2020, everybody made their millions, you know, or their highest figure, whatever that looks like, because, you know, people just had more disposable income, you know. It was just a very interesting time. And I think people had, you know, were spending their money in different ways because they couldn't spend it in things like going out for dinners and whatnot. But also I think that there was a shift in what we valued. And I think a lot of people who maybe struggled at that time realized that, you know, that having support, you know, whatever modality that was, would be beneficial for them. And so, you know, there was a real big kind of movement, and a lot of people, you know, had a lot of success then. And then, you know, obviously now kind of in 2021, 2022, 2023, it's really different. And especially this year, as was, you know, obviously the narrative of recession and, you know, prices of things going up, like it shifts. And so if you're looking to pivot or, you know, thinking about what that next step is for you, what I would say is really, really tune into, you know, what is the solution, what is the problem that you are a solution to, and do your market research. Like, is this a genuine problem for your audience? Because, you know, certainly with some of my clients that have clients that have come to me, it's like, it's just not selling like it used to. And it's actually not that we have to start again. It's that we've got to tweak how we're talking about that thing and make it more relevant for the now versus what it was 2 years ago, because we're in very, very different climates.
Yeah, very different climates. And just the way people are awakening to a much different way of living now.
Absolutely.
We're becoming a much more conscious community, especially in online business. You can't escape some of this stuff and ways of teaching on Instagram these days. It's you can see the landscape of business shifting. Okay, so let's bridge spirituality and strategy then. Do it.
So strategy is that foundational piece. You know, first of all, are you who you say you are? You know, what's your uniqueness? What's your method? Like, what exactly is the problem that you're solving? What's your mission? You know, what are your company values? Like, it's really building that house. And then there's, you know, the strategy around your sales strategy, your marketing strategy. You know, I now am speaking around to visibility and the fact that it's now marketing and sales. So it's what you're doing on the front end, but also what you're doing on the back end. Your offer, you know, your funnels, your systems, your processes, like all of that is the foundational piece. And obviously, you know, what enables you to sell and have a successful, in quotation marks, business, whatever that looks like for you, because success is different for everyone. But
that's another one of my questions. We'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah. And then, you know, the spirituality piece is, you know, you being in integrity, you living your values, you know, understanding that you're part of something bigger and that you are always co-creating, you know, with spirit, creator, whatever it is that you want to call it, and that there's a greater meaning. You know, I think that there's so much that we get to explore as part of our inner world that enables us to be who we want to be in our business. And, you know, success is the person you become. It's a quote by Hal Elrod, which, you know, really struck me and has stayed with me ever since, because it's so true. Like, you can have all of the systems and all of the structures in place, but if you're burnt out and you're exhausted and you're dysregulated and you just have no connection to self, you're all in your head, you're not in your body, that success is going to run out eventually, because you won't be able to hold it. You know, you don't have the capacity for it. And so there's a real magic that comes with merging the two worlds. And I'm one of the only people, you know, who does it in the way that I do it. I don't really know anyone who does it in the way that I do it. There are lots of people who go purely on the energetics, and there's a lot of people who are purely on the strategy. And, you know, I find that by merging those two worlds, you always have something to lean on, you know, and look at and explore. So sometimes it is actually the strategy that needs tweaking, and other times it's like, do you know what? I'm actually not feeling this. I'm not feeling that my heart's not in this, you know. And you to have that power, you know, is just incredible for business owners.
I think it's really interesting because a lot of spiritual people who would class themselves as spiritual, love to be in, you know, love to lean on energetics and manifesting something into reality without necessarily taking responsibility on as the human and leaving it all up to the creator. But this is where what I think you do is pretty special, because we do need both. We need to be spiritual and to remember that we're living in a 3D reality and a human realm and a material realm. So we have to kind of act in accordance to that. I know when I was running my first business, which was a fine jewelry business, and at the height of my success, just after the pandemic, is when I was diagnosed. And I was running that business purely on strategy, and I was burnt out and I was having anxiety attacks and I was ill. And I mean, ultimately, I knew that business wasn't for me anymore. And I transitioned throughout my healing, and after my healing, I transitioned into what I do today, which is I'm a spiritual life coach. But I did that thing where I tried to rely solely on energetics, and it doesn't work. You need both.
Yeah, totally. And, look, I don't think that either is wrong. And I think there's different seasons where you're going to lean more into the strategy or more into, the energetics piece. But, having them both, I find that ultimately the more structure, we have a value in the business, which is the triple S system, which is like systems and structures create spaciousness. So, I'm fully able to be in my vibrancy and, increase my connection to the world and, everything around me, and have the time and space and freedom to do that, because the systems and structures in my business are creating that space for me. And so, yeah, it's knowing that actually finding that balance can be really good for us as humans as well, having routine. And it's interesting, you said the word responsibility. There is such a narrative of like, I'm just going to turn it over to the universe. It's like, why should creator do all of that for you? In shamanism, it's like you give 100% of your 50%. And I really, really really live that as a rule in my life. It's like, why should I just be like, yeah, creator, just like give me what I want? It's like, no, like be responsible, give 100% of your 50%, and creator will meet you with 100% of their 50%.
Yeah.
It's conscious co-creation. It's not called co-creation for, it's called conscious creation for co-creation for a reason. And I think that's something that, is a good reminder of like, oh yeah, I've got to go do my bit,
I think people, especially when they probably haven't delved too deep into the work, the really deep inner work, and we just go off what we see on Instagram. We like that idea of the shiny thing. Oh yes, the universe is going to do it all for us. But that then leads me to the email that you sent out to your list the other day, and you wrote in it a bit about building a business is like growing a garden. And that's similar, isn't it? It's you're sowing the seeds and you're going to get back, you're going to reap what you sow.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you sow those seeds and, the garden, part of the garden flourishes and it's beautiful. And you're like, oh, I did this, amazing. And then there'll be like, the hedge or that one row of things that just aren't quite growing and can't quite work out, so you try something different and then you try something different again and it dies. Yeah. Oh, so the next season you're like, okay, we'll try again. We'll do this. Right. I've learned from what worked over here and I'm going to, leverage this bit. I'm going to leverage that knowledge and put it over here. And then one day it's, and I honestly believe it's like a good 5 years, you need a good 5 years and you need that length of time, I think, to really understand what it is to be an entrepreneur and certainly to be able to teach it. And you're like, wow, my garden, isn't it beautiful? And it's not to say that, you still need to tweak things and nourish things and all of those things. But yeah, I do see kind of business like a bit of a garden. And yeah, it's funny. Like I've been in business for 8 years, kind of coaching for 5. I've done a lot of launches. I've worked with hundreds of women. And yeah, because everything's growing and evolving all the time, we are growing and evolving. We're having to grow and evolve. What worked last year isn't working now, so yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's an ecosystem.
Well, exactly. I mean, business is just like nature in that we have winters, we have springs, we have summers, and then we have autumn. Like we're going into now, we have to let the leaves fall sometimes. And I think back to that resistance in business and knowing when to pivot, it could just simply be that you're going through a winter and you may need to sow some new seeds.
Yeah, totally.
Why do you think most people who start a business, what's the percentage rate of failure? Something like 95%, is it?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't use the word failure.
That was my next question. What
I
do you
just think it's like,
can
God,
we
that,
redefine failure?
yeah,
And
totally. Yeah, so you didn't like build a successful business, so you're a failure. You're part of that 95%. Because I think that there can be a narrative that it's super easy. I think that it takes a lot, certainly in women, it takes a lot. Like, there's a lot of compromise, there's a lot of trade-offs in my life. It takes a lot of me. There's a level of responsibility that comes with, holding, certainly now at my level, kind of what I hold. It's not for everyone. It's not for everyone, like, you have to be a go-getter. You have to be ambitious. You have to be willing to get your hands dirty. You have to do hard things and sit in very messy middles. Yeah, it's, I think it requires a lot of us as humans. And I think a lot of people, maybe just don't get the support that they need. They don't see the value in, coaches and, business support. Yeah.
yeah, that's an interesting one, because I see that a lot in women as well, that they maybe don't know how to ask for support. They don't know how to seek support, and they do feel like they need to do it all on their own.
Yeah.
And the other big thing is not feeling worthy of investing in themselves.
Yeah. And also, I think this a lot. I know this a lot because there's clients come to me and they're like, I've trained in nutrition, I've trained as a coach, I've trained in. That doesn't make you a business owner. That makes you a coach. Right. And so you're then navigating business. And I know, why my clients do well and why I've done well is because I've got that marketing, I've got a business skill. I understand a really big portion of business, actually two now, because marketing and sales. So there's that strategy piece, and there's understanding, if you think of areas of the business, there's customer service, there's sales, there's marketing. A lot of people will go and train, and then those companies that train them don't then take them through, here's what you need to know about business. So it's not surprising that you're, coming out of a coaching academy and then going, yeah, okay, but so how do, what but my branding, and but who am I, and like, what am I trying to say, and how do I say it, and how do I do a reel, and all of the things, like, how do I hold a sales conversation? Like, they didn't teach me that when I came out of nutrition school. And so it's not surprising that we're not supported, because I think a lot of those, certifications actually don't deliver on what happens when you go out into the big wide world.
Yeah, definitely. And I saw that a lot with jewelry designers as well. I was very fortunate that I was passionate about business, and not everybody is. But I loved the idea of growing a business, whereas most designers wanted to focus on the art and the creativity, which is amazing. But we need the skills of business as well.
And if you don't have the skill, you have to be the person that's like, I'm going to go learn the skill.
Yeah.
I didn't know, what I know about sales then. I didn't know what I know about funnels and systems, and I didn't know that stuff. I chose to, Facebook ads, data. Like, I'm always open to learning more. And that's that responsibility piece. There's a responsibility required to go and be the person that masters something that they don't know. Like, how, an example is when people go, I'm just not that good with money. That's not true. Like, stop using that as an excuse. Be good with money by learning. Go and learn how to be better with money. It's a choice. And I know that sounds quite like harsh, but it is the truth. Like, oh, I'm just not good at that. Well, why? And when you start questioning, well, actually, I don't know. This is what my mum used to tell me, and that's what she used to say. And suddenly you're like, oh, hold on a minute. Well, am I good at money? Well, yeah, because, I've got that spreadsheet that I check now and again. Well, maybe if I check that more, then I'd be better with money. And it's actually really simple, so much of it is just like dissolving a lot of the stuff, the narratives, the patterns, the behaviors that we maybe just haven't questioned for a really long time. Like, yeah, why do I do that thing? Why don't I do that thing, you know?
Yeah, interesting. So then, what are the patterns and behaviors of somebody who runs a successful business?
I think there's a lot of, I know there is a lot of self-leadership. You know, you have to get up in the morning and go do the thing because no one's going to do it for you. So that self-leadership piece is really important. You have to be able to lead yourself. You have to be able to set boundaries. You have to understand what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not. That's going to grow as you scale your business. 100%. What I used to tolerate, I would not tolerate now. And that comes with that capacity thing, you know, more than anything. You have to look after yourself. You have to know the micro habits that actually make the biggest impact. You know, it's what I was saying. It's like, it takes a lot of me. I'm in bed by 9:30, 10 every night. You know, I don't get drunk on a weekday. I don't, you know, I eat well, I sleep well, I meditate. You know, I just do the things that allow me to feel really safe so that then in my business, I feel safe to expand. A lot of the time we look for safety in our business. Like once I meet that milestone, like once I've made that amount of money, it will all just be easier. It's very far from the truth because earning more, holding more clients comes with a whole other set of, you know, challenges.
Yeah.
Ultimately. And so, yeah, you know, there's a real responsibility piece. And I think reframing that personally for me, reframing responsibility was a massive thing. It's like, oh, I don't want to be responsible. And I was like, well, actually, in being responsible, I have complete and utter freedom. Like no one tells me what to do. I run a house on my own, I parent, you know, I do whatever I want whenever I want. And that for me works because that's my value. But if I were like, oh God, I'm responsible for everyone and had that kind of mindset, it might stop me really being able to live in that truth, which I think is my sort of final point. It's like, you've got to have that inner compass and you've got to trust yourself. You know, if I'd have gone by what people had told me was possible for me, I would not be who I am today. And so I continued to learn and boost the muscle of trust, muscle of self-trust. Like I trust myself to know that this is right for me. It's infuriating for a lot of people who are close in my world because I'm that person who like doesn't properly read labels and is just like, yeah, we're going to do it. I just know I need to buy that sofa. I just know I need to buy that house. I just know I need, and it can be quite difficult for people around me because they're like, how do you, and I just know, or I'm like, I shouldn't buy that. We shouldn't do that. We shouldn't do that thing. I shouldn't buy that house. That happened to me recently. I was like, there's just something, you know, I don't think I should be buying this, that. It's that self-trust and really trusting. And especially in business, it's like if someone's like, you should, you know, here's a strategy. And you're like, it's not going to work for me. I'm going to try this thing, just like, you know, and then it works. You know, it's because you trusted in yourself and also trust yourself that even when things don't work out, you have the strength and the capacity to move through that.
Definitely. And I love how you say it's a muscle that you have to build, because it is. And you build that muscle by getting out of bed and doing the thing every day.
It's like confidence.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm confident, I'll do the thing. No. You build confidence through experience because you're building evidence along the way that you are in fact courageous and confident enough to do the thing. So we wait for like, when I feel better about my body, I'll do that thing. When I insert here, I'll do the thing. When my website's ready, when my thing's ready, when it's like, no. When we build evidence, it reinforces that the thing that we were scared of doing, we can actually do. And that's where that support piece comes in, right? When you've got someone in your corner going, okay, come on, you can do this. It's like, oh yeah, I did it. And then no one died. And I actually felt quite good about it. Oh, okay, I might do it again tomorrow. You know, and I have that with clients who, you know, obviously being a visibility coach, they're like, oh God, like speaking to camera, it's a really big deal. I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? We map out a bit of a strategy. They're like, I'm going to do 10 days. I'm going to commit to 10 days. And every day, you know, they speak to a theme. And by day 5, they're like, I'm just so genuinely excited about sharing this content with my community. I'm excited to go online today. It doesn't take that long, you know, 5 days, 3 days, 10 days. And suddenly you've changed that pattern. But if you'd have waited until you thought you were ready, you'd have never have done it and built the evidence that it is in fact available for you. And you know, and then see the results of that, like, oh, I went live and then I made 2 sales. Oh my goodness. Okay. Even more evidence that I am valid and I am enough and I can do the thing.
Yeah, which is amazing. And I remember the first ever live video I did 7 years ago. I was terrified, and I still get nervous. I mean, I've had this podcast for 3 years, and whenever I introduce anybody, my voice cracks. I get nervous, and it's just a really unconscious thing that the more you do it, like I love being on camera because also you're sharing what you're most passionate about, and you come across like our soul shines when we're able to speak about what we love.
Totally. I remember the first time I did stories, and it's like I watched it again. I thought, oh, it's not right. Watched it again. I was like, okay, you know what? It's been 45 minutes, Pandora. You just need to sort your shit out. And it's like, right, just do it, press it, leave your phone. And I went downstairs to make a cup of tea. I was like, I just need to like just do the thing.
Yeah.
And of course, like I always say, we're not born performers, and these things are being visible is, you know, it's in its expression, it's a performance, and we have to build the confidence to be able to show up in that way. So much of it is easier when you have that strategy piece. Like, I know who I am, I know what I do, I know how I'm saying what I do. Like, everything is easier when you're really solid in that piece. If you're like, oh, I'm not really sure what to say, it's going to be so much harder to go online and talk about it, right? So, you know, that's how those two worlds really merge.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other thing that I've picked up on in that is that when you said, oh, I did the thing and nobody died. And that's the other thing, is making this failure the thing that we might mess up. It's okay. My voice might crack when I introduce somebody. Nobody died, and it's okay.
Yes, exactly. And like, and even if you did the thing and it went wrong, like, can you trust yourself enough to know that it doesn't need to mean what it doesn't need to mean, and you can move on?
Yeah.
You know, that it's not everything. It's like you were your business, but you're not your business.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we attach so much of our worth and ego. You know, a lot of this, we're talking about ego, like, oh, but I've got to be seen to be this thing and perfect. And, you know, I did a masterclass today and I was like, there will be typos. There's always one, you know, and I just said it. I'm calling myself out now, right at the beginning. If you spot the typo before me, let me know. Because so what if there's a typo? And of course there was a typo.
Human.
Yeah. And there is a part of me that's like, well, I could have checked it beforehand. Do you know what? I didn't have the time. I was so focused on like getting those slides in because I wanted it to be so valuable. It was one typo, right? In the grand scheme of things, I delivered, and I delivered something really amazing that will support every single woman who was on that call. So yeah, I think there's a knowing of when we want things to look a certain way. I know sometimes when I'm in the design of my business, I can get quite like, that's not good enough. That's not, you know, and I have to have it a certain way. But that's because I understand the importance of building a brand.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's a smaller detail, like, oh, there was a typo in the email. Okay, I can let that one go. It's knowing what to let go of in order to quite simply move forward, and then what actually is more important, you know?
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so I'm going to just move the conversation slightly. So your podcast is called The Magnetic Woman. What makes a woman magnetic?
Truth, being in her truth. So the concept behind The Magnetic Woman was bridging the gap between who you present as to the world and who you truly are.
I love that, because that's the other quote that I pulled off your website. I'll just read it quickly. I know that when we close the gap between who we present as to the world and who we truly are, we activate our magnetism. And from this place, we radically transform our lives.
Yes. So it goes back to, are you living your values? You know, are you being who you say you are? Are you being truthful about your desires and your standards? You know, it's giving women the opportunity to be very unapologetic about who they are, who they want to be, what they want to create. You know, certainly in my world now, about, you know, the wealth that they want to build, you know, and I create the spaces for women who have that ambition in them. You know, they have that mission, they have that heart, they want to do more, they want to create more, they want to have a really rich life, whatever that looks like for them. And the space is you know, it's a space where we can be very like, this is who I am and this is what I want. And, you know, without that fear of judgment or someone disagreeing with us. And that's really important for me and important for the world, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I love that there are so many leaders like yourself out there inspiring women to stand in their truth of who they are authentically. And I love that quote because, I mean, it also resonates a lot with the work that I've done on myself with shadow work, Jungian psychology, and the work that I do with my clients, because it is about being authentic. Life is about being authentic. And we may not know who we are in truth until we question the narratives in our mind, the patterns, the behaviors that have been conditioned into us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's it. It's like, you know, questioning that, like, who am I really? You know, if I took off all the different hats that I wear, like, who am I? And just anchoring into the fact that we are multidimensional beings. You know, like, I get to be a great mum, a silly mum. You know, I'm so silly and just, I'm very different with my daughter, let's say, than I am with my clients. And that doesn't mean I'm not authentic. It's just that there's many parts to me. Sometimes I feel like I just want to be super sexy and really playful, and other times I'm more serious. Like my partner often says, it's like, well, I'm not quite sure, work Pandora, because when I'm working, I'm like, I'm in the zone, and I'll be like, yeah, what? Like, very, like, I'm in the zone. And then it's like, if it goes down, I'm like, hey baby, what are you having for dinner? And I get to be all of those versions of me. And that's living the fullness of your multidimensionalness. And that's really what the magnetic woman is about. It's knowing that there are many layers to you, many versions of you that you will live throughout your lifetime as well. You know, certainly as women, we have, you know, obviously, you know, growing up, and then we kind of turn from, you know, girls to women, and then we have the cycles of our periods, and then we have perimenopause and then menopause. And, you know, there's a whole kind of rebirth, death and rebirth journeys that we go on, our bodies go on as part of that. You know, I remember feeling so different when I gave birth to my daughter. It was like just everything, my body changed, everything in me changed. Things that I could do before that I then couldn't do. You know, I just, like, going on scary rides or being at the top of like basically heights. Like, I just there were just things that, it's just that mother instinct was just like, hard no. And the exploration of all of those parts of us is what the magnetic woman is about. And it's, you know, it can be an interesting journey to go on, but deeply satisfying to really feel comfortable in your skin, like, this is who I am.
Yeah, I love that. I really resonate with that. And a lot of the work that I do as well, we look at archetypes and the archetypes within the collective unconscious and how we have them within us. And, you know, the innocent, the mother, the sage, you know, we get to play them throughout our lives, and we can embody them, you know, the Amazon, the warrior, while we're at work, and then, you know, the lover when we're off out having fun. We get to do all of this.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I think makes life really beautiful. You also use the word magnificence a lot, magnificent, in some, I'll just pick it up from your emails, and I really I really love it. And I think that we all have it within us, this magnificence, this power. When we face a lot of knocks in life, like you mentioned, you had a Saturn return, I've had a Saturn return, dark night of the soul, whatever, we all have. Yeah. I love the eye roll. Yeah. Yeah, I know that. We have these things. So when we've been knocked in life and we've experienced something like this, how do you think we can bring this magnificence and this power out of us? I know you've done a lot of work with shamans and different medicines and practices.
I think being compassionate towards yourself, being graceful, and seeking the lesson.
The hardest bit.
Yeah, like, what did I learn from this experience? Every version of a dark night of the soul, or just simply put, the most challenging times of my life, have given me lessons. Absolutely, in hindsight, it's a beautiful thing to be like, oh yeah, I see why that happened, for the divine timing of my life. But I think if you can give yourself compassion in those moments and be graceful with yourself, and seek the lesson, there's always a gift. One of the ways that I live my life is that creator, universe, spirit is always giving me gifts. Every experience, even the challenging ones, is a gift.
Yeah.
And that's where that compassionate piece comes in, because you've got to look at yourself and be graceful and like, yeah, I really needed to learn that. Thank you. It's quite humbling, I think, to learn those things about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely get humbled as humans. There is a lot of, and especially, and in business, we have to be humble if we're going to lead a successful business.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay, so this has been an amazing conversation. I mean, I could continue talking for hours, but we have a time limit. So, what are the top 3 lessons that you can offer people, lessons or tips about living a magnetic life?
Get support. It's really hard to catch your blind spots on your own. It's really hard to build a business without business knowledge. Like, get support. The second piece is find your truth. Be curious. I think actually just full stop, be curious. Be curious with yourself, be curious with others. Like, so much of my own journey and the journey that I'm lucky enough to work with women for long periods of time, and everything that they have created has come from a place of curiosity. Like, oh, I wonder if I tried that thing, or I wonder if I did this a different way, or I wonder if I just put my prices up, or so much of it is that curiosity piece, that stops us doing the same thing over and over and again. And I'm going to say kind of self-love, self-trust. Self-trust is often built from self-love, but for me, they sort of feel like one of the same. When I trust myself and I lead from that place, I know that I'm loving myself because I'm trusting myself. And when I'm, loving myself, I'm building that trust. So yeah, I think it gets forgotten, but actually ultimately everything comes down to you choosing you, and loving yourself and loving all that you are, and that supports you to do the things.
To do the things and see the results and learn the lessons and death and rebirth and start again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or shall we say winter and summer? We're just autumn. Yeah, we'll stick with the seasons.
Totally. And look, sometimes you're going to be experiencing like every single one of those seasons in a whole day. It's just
been there.
It's just part of it, and I think the resilience that you build to be able to hold that,
Yeah, definitely. And we build resilience, don't we? We're all so much more resilient than we think we are. You know, I thought that I'd had some shit thrown at me, and then, you know, you're really thrown shit when life changes. So yeah, we're all a lot more resilient than we first believe.
Yeah.
Amazing, Pandora. Thank you so much for this conversation. And I will link all of your website, your Instagram, and everything in the show notes so that people can connect with you. Is there anything you just want to tell our listeners about your work, where you'd like to direct them?
Yeah, probably the best place to find me is pandorapaloma.com/masterminds. That's kind of the core of my offer. So I have a mastermind. They run 6 months or a year for every stage of business. So early stages up to kind of 5K months, scaling to 6 figures, and then 6 to multi-6. That's what I'm pretty much known for, and that's sort of my signature offering. So head there.
Amazing. I'll link that in the show notes for anybody who's interested. I also highly recommend signing up to her email newsletter, because there's always loads of amazing value in there.
Awesome.
So yeah, thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of The Mandala Effect. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on your favourite podcast platform. I greatly appreciate your ongoing support, and the podcast wouldn't be where it is today without you. So thank you. Don't forget to share this podcast with your friends and family, and let's continue spreading the mandala effect of magic and infinite possibilities. See you next week.